everyone, and welcome to our fourth session in American English Live Series 23. We're so excited that each of you are here with us. My name is Elena, and I'll be with you today along with my colleague behind the scenes, Javid, who will be the moderator, helping answer your questions and responding to comments during the session. We wanted to let you know that today's session will be recorded and shared across various platforms. By attending and adding your comments to the chat section during today's webinar, your first name, country, and/or comment may be included in the video recording. By participating, you consent to your appearance in the recording and its use for purposes related to the work or business of FHI 360 and the U.S. Department of State. If you do not want to appear in the recording, please do not share any comments in the chat box during the live webinar. Throughout Series 23, we are exploring a variety of topics in classroom management. We hope you're able to use the practical ideas we share. Here's what to expect today. This session is about 60 minutes long. The presenter will present the material, and I, as your host, will ask questions and make comments too. But we really hope to hear from you, our audience, so that we can address your ideas and experiences. So please share your thoughts today using the chat box. And now for today's webinar, Learning Mindset in the Language Learning Classroom. Learning in general, and especially language learning, is not a linear process. Mistakes are a natural part of becoming more skillful, knowledgeable, and fluent. Embracing a learning mindset helps create a classroom community where mistakes are welcomed and seen as opportunities for growth. This mindset flourishes in classroom environments where everyone is a learner, including the teacher. In this interactive session, participants will learn how to help their students and themselves as teachers develop a learning mindset. By the end of the webinar, teachers will walk away with a variety of practical strategies to support this mindset in their classrooms. And we are pleased to introduce our presenter, Dr. Elena Andrei. Elena is an associate professor of TESOL and the TESOL program coordinator at Cleveland State University in Ohio, where she teaches courses for current and future teachers. Elena has also taught English as a second language in a middle school in Charlotte, North Carolina in the United States, and English as a foreign language to K through 12 students in her native Romania. Elena also does research to inform her teaching and add to the literature. Her research is classroom-based and is focused on second language literacy, multiliteracies in technology, teacher education and teacher training, and multilingual educators like herself. Elena presents at teacher conferences and has been invited by school districts to lead both online and in-person teacher development. Welcome, Elena. We're so happy to have you here today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar, Learning Mindset in the Language Learning Classroom. So excited to be here to share with you my thoughts and my experience related to learning mindset in the English language classroom. So, learning mindset in the classroom. Look at the two pictures I have here for you. The one on the left is a winding path that goes back and forth with maybe not such a clear direction. The one on the right, a messy desk with a laptop, notebooks, lots of small notes, and some crumbled paper. What do you think these two pictures have in common, Elena?
Well, maybe something related to the title and topic of today's session, but I'm not really sure. The desk looks really messy, and the road actually has some direction to it. It's just windy, and you need to really look at it from above to see what's going on.
Yes, that's right. The common theme seems to be messy, all over the place, but with clear end direction or end goal. The road goes back and forth, but it takes you to the other side of the river. There are so many things spread out on the table, and from outside it looks messy, but the learner needs all things there to study or finish their task. So there is an end goal and clear path. It is just not linear. In this session today, we will discuss the importance of promoting learning mindset and how it can help with classroom management, explain new strategies to support learning mindset in the language learning classroom, and reflect on how we can implement and/or change strategies to promote a learning mindset. First, I wanted to go over some definitions of terms I will be using in the presentation today. So when I say classroom, I refer to a physical space and a group of students and a teacher together. What I mean by community of learners, it's a group of students and teachers together working together on a common goal, such as learning English. And learning mindset refers to the belief and willingness to learn from mistakes, and learn with and from others. So why promoting a learning mindset? I'm a former teacher of English as a second language and English as a foreign language, and now I'm a teacher educator. In my role, I write, I'm a researcher, and I use English, which is my second language. I'm also a part of a community of supportive peers. We write together and support each other in having learning mindsets. In our community, we know each other well as learners and who we are, what hobbies we have, what we like to do in our free time. We write and learn from each other, giving each other feedback on our teaching and explaining to one another our thinking and sometimes mistakes. During this webinar, I invite you to pay attention and think about a learning mindset and the ideas discussed here that can be useful for classroom management, which is the theme of the series. As you participate in the webinar, I want you to think about how can a learning mindset support your classroom management. So we need to talk about why a learning mindset in the classroom is important. Well, several important main reasons. Students become more confident and engaged in the classroom. A learning mindset helps with classroom management and student motivation. And it supports language learning over time, which I think is very important. All right, I want to hear a little bit from you all. How do you make a learning mindset? How do you model? How do you model a learning mindset for your students? Share your responses in the chat.
All right, let us know, everyone. What are some ways that you model a learning mindset for your students? We'd love to hear from you. Let's see. Oh, we have some responses coming in already. So Amina says that she shares her own learning goals with students. Absolutely. Carlos says, I celebrate mistakes as opportunities to learn. Fantastic. May says that she reflects aloud on what she learned from teaching each lesson. Great. Liam says, I try new teaching strategies and ask students for feedback. Let's see here. Oh, Fatima shared that she tries to show curiosity by asking questions that she doesn't know the answer to. And we'll take two more responses here. Let's see. Jin says that they take language classes themselves and they share that experience with students. And Raj says, I talk about how I overcame challenges when learning English or other languages I know. Fantastic. Thank you so much, everybody, for sharing.
Yes, thank you so much. Those are all wonderful ideas that you shared, so thank you. So, first, no one is born knowing it all, and we all need to learn different things. We are all born actually learners. Learner, learning anything is a process, takes time, involves mistakes and errors. It is non-linear. Think of how you or someone else you know learned to ride a bike. First, they use training wheels and they do not keep the direction straight. Take several tries or sessions until they are confident and can do it. So how does that translate in the classroom? On our next slide, I will share two of the strategies. So promoting a learning mindset in the classroom can be done by having a classroom community of learners, students and teachers who are supportive of each other, and by helping each other and by accepting mistakes as learning opportunities. Both of these help student language learning and student engagement and motivation and eventually classroom management. So creating and sustaining a classroom community of learners is an ongoing process, which includes the teacher and the students learning about each other. So the basis of any community of learners is knowing your students. Here are some ideas of how you can do that. Learning their names or nicknames they prefer and pronouncing them correctly. Learning about their hobbies and background, maybe about where they live or what they like to do. Learning about why they want to learn English or what they like about school. For example, I was an English as a foreign language teacher and I taught 8th grade. And here is what I can share about my students. My 8th graders all love soccer. I have some who do not care at all about soccer but like to play outside. At the beginning of every Monday class, we chat as a community about the weekend soccer game or their outdoor activities. I'm using what I know about my students in the language learning classroom to create and sustain that community of learners, and it is also an easy way to use English in an authentic manner. In the same token, as a teacher, you can share with your students about you, such as your name, hobbies or background, what motivated you to learn English, why you became a teacher, and additional things that you feel comfortable or you want to share with them. So I'm curious to hear from you. What are some things about you that you have shared or want to share with your students? Please share your responses in the chat.
All right, everyone, let us know, what are some things that you have shared with your students or that you want to share with your students? Let us know in the chat. We would love to hear. And Elena, while we wait, we do have a couple comments from the audience. I'm just really excited about this topic. So Carlos said, thank you so much. It's really powerful when students see that teachers are learners too. Absolutely. And Aya says, students can open up more when they know something personal about you. Absolutely. All right, everybody. And it looks like we do have some responses coming into this question as well.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so Tariq says, I shared that I speak 3 languages and that I struggle with pronunciation when I was learning. Great. Abdul says that he shares his interests, especially his love of music, with students. Sophia says that I told them about my favorite childhood book and why I loved it. Let's see. Nina says that she shares her hobbies like painting and hiking with her students so they get to know more about her. David says he shares about his family. Aya says, I shared my experience moving to a new country and learning the language there. All right, lots of great comments, everybody. Let's take one more from Marco. Marco says that he told his students about his pet and how he uses different languages with that pet. All right, thanks everybody for sharing these great responses.
Thank you so much for sharing. I think everything that you share makes a great connection with your students, and all those can become very easily topics that you talk about that will allow you to use English in the classroom. So thank you so much all for sharing. So you learn about your students and you share with them about you. Learning and knowing each other as part of sustaining a community of learners is an ongoing process. You don't just do it in the first weeks of class and then you're done. Here are some strategies you can use. Students sharing about their free time and or family activities, classroom celebrations around important events in a student's or teacher's lives, daily or weekly chats with the students or with the teacher. You can specifically learn or know about each other in the classroom as part of your lesson. You can make that as part of your regular lesson planning or activities for the day. You can ask the students what they did during the weekend. If there was a community event such as a match or game, you can definitely talk about that. And you can have a daily or weekly chat about topics of interest, such as animals or sports, or maybe a recent movie. You can do all this in English and or at times in the languages that you all share, especially for beginners. And to help with using English, you can also have sentence starters for students to support their English use. So on this slide, I have specific activities or questions you can ask your students as part of sharing classroom celebrations and daily chats. So for example, what did you think of the game this weekend? Or what did you do for Diwali this year? Or what did you do this weekend or on your day off? What did you think of the new library we have here at school? And you can also allow the students to dress up for Halloween. So again, I'm curious to hear from you all. What are some questions or topics you might ask your students to get to know each other better? Please share with us.
Let us know, everybody, what are some questions or topics that you might ask your students to get to know each other better? We'd love to hear your responses. And Elena, I have to say, I really love the idea of building these ideas, these activities to get to know each other into the actual lesson plans. I think that's such a great way to continue doing these activities throughout the year and not just at the beginning of the term. So thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
And yeah, Nadia also says she loves this idea and the examples that you provided. She said she believes asking these types of questions will help build empathy and connection with the students. Thank you for that great comment, Nadia. All right, and we do have some comments coming in from the audience to this question. So Shin says that on the first day of class, they ask about students' hobbies and how many siblings students have. Walla says that maybe he can ask his students to share something that they're proud of and something that makes them laugh to help get to know students better. Mohammed said that sometimes he asks students to share a song or a movie that is meaningful to them. Chloe asks students about their dream job. Arun says, asking my young learners about their favorite cartoon characters or books is something that they often do. Lucia asks, what's a food that reminds you of home? And let's see, we have one more comment here that we will read out from our audience. So Ben says that he starts each week by asking students what they did over the weekend. And then at the end of the week, they asked about their favorite things that they learned that week. All right. Thank you for those great comments, everybody.
Thank you all. I really appreciate you guys sharing. Anything that you learn about your students is definitely time worth spending. And you can always reference what you learned about them in future activities and lessons. So thank you so much. I think those are all great ideas. So, a community of learners can be defined as a group of people who actively engage in learning from one another, learners from teachers, teachers from learners, and learners from learners. As you can see, what I want to focus on next is learning from one another or learning together. So two ways I want to share about how we can learn from one another or together in the English language classroom through team tasks and peer feedback. Next, I will give you examples of each of them. So team tasks, you can have teams of 2, 3, or 4. I would say no more than 5 students together. For team tasks, students need to have a clear activity to work on or a clear objective, and they all know what they have to do. Here's an example of a team task. So the first part during reading, the students will do individually. They will read a short passage about earthquakes. Then they will answer 3 or 5 comprehension questions. And then they will identify 3 new or important vocabulary words, define them, and use them in a sentence. Once the individual work is done, students collaborate to complete a team task together. Each student contributes in a specific way or has a clear, specific, defined role, as you can see here on the screen. So you have the vocabulary collector who gathers all the new words from the team member. You have the question master who leads a discussion where each member shares their answers and help clarify misunderstandings. And then you have the summarizer who writes a short team summary combining everyone's understandings. So, I'm curious to know, when designing team tasks for your students, how do you ensure that all students are actively participating in a team task? Please put your responses in the chat.
This is such a great question, Elena. Let us know, audience, when you design team tasks for your students, how do you ensure that all students are actively participating in that team task? We'd love to hear your ideas. All right, let's see. We have a couple responses coming in. Hassan says that they assign rotating roles, like you mentioned, and they use the roles of timekeeper, note taker, and presenter. Let's see. Samuel says that they go around the classroom and monitor students and listen passively without students noticing. All right. Emily says that she uses peer evaluation to help encourage accountability in teamwork. Ravi says that this is something they really struggle with, and so they love your idea of using roles to help encourage active participation. Anna says that she checks in with each group and asks questions to the quieter students. Maya says that she uses digital tools where everyone can contribute something as a way to help everybody participate. Let's see. Anita says that she designs tasks that require input from each team member so everyone has a responsibility. Leo sets clear expectations and tries to give feedback on how well students worked together. All right, and we'll take two more responses. Such great ideas coming in, everybody. Two more, one from Yuki. Yuki says, I let students choose their teams based on their strengths. And Samira says that I include reflection questions about group dynamics as part of the assignment. Amazing, such great ideas, everybody. Thank you for sharing.
Yes, thank you very much. I think it's as you guys, as you noted, it is very important to be clear what roles each student have in the team task. I think that is key. If you're trying it the first time in your classroom and it doesn't work, don't be discouraged. The first time you and your students are trying something new, it might not work very smoothly, but the more you do it, the better you'll become at it and the students know what is expected of them. So thank you so much for sharing your ideas and what you guys are doing. All right, so peer feedback is another way to support a community of learners in the language learning classroom. This is another great opportunity to use language in an authentic way. In general, in peer feedback, students exchange work and provide feedback to each other. Students need to know how to give feedback, and they can do that using a checklist that you as a teacher provide, or maybe you co-create as a class. Here is a specific example of peer feedback. So for step one, students write about earthquakes. Remember, they just read about that in the previous team task assignment. And then they provide each other feedback using a checklist. And I have a checklist here for you. So the checklist has a title, has an intro, middle, and end, and has information from the earthquake test. So just a quick wrap up of how we can support a learning mindset in the classroom by creating a community of learners. So knowing your students, learning and knowing about each other and learning together. And specifically, we talked about sharing, classroom celebrations, daily or weekly chats, team tasks, and peer feedback. Next, I will move to promoting a learning mindset in the classroom by embracing mistakes. So making mistakes is human. Mistakes are part of the process of language learning. When we practice, in our case, when we use a language we are learning, we make mistakes. Mistakes lead to learning. No one is born knowing it all. The teacher and the students can embrace mistakes as part of their classroom community of learning by keeping track of them individually or as a class, by acknowledging mistakes, and by trying to explain their thinking and the root cause of the mistakes. We can keep track of mistakes as a class on big poster boards, or students can do that individually in their notebook in form of tally charts. Here on the slide, I have an example of common mistakes I made as a student and sometimes as a teacher too. I used to say she don't instead of she doesn't, and I would spell difficult with only one F. I have two pictures here of how to use a tally chart individually or as a class. Another strategy you could use is a marble jar for mistakes to celebrate growth. So the purpose of this would be to help students view mistakes as learning opportunities and encourage a learning mindset in a supportive, team-based environment. Here's how you can set this up. So you set up the marble jar, as you can see here in this picture. You introduce the concept of the marble jar, and then you track mistakes positively as a class. You can put marbles in the jar, or you can ask students, or every time they notice a mistake, they can remind you to put a marble in the jar. You can do a weekly check-in to see how many times you made the mistake. And then a reflection moment as a class in which you talk about the mistakes. And here I put on the slide again the 2 mistakes that we are tracking. That as a class for that week or for that unit, we are tracking. Again, the difficult with only 1 F and the she don't. So as a class, we can be open and acknowledge our mistakes. And we can do it as a teacher to the whole class. I know it can be hard at times as teacher, and also teacher to students. So here's an example of how the teacher can acknowledge a mistake. Oh, that was my mistake. Try again. I'm glad I caught it. Or the teacher can tell the students, oh, that was a mistake. Try again. No worries. Glad we caught it. So I think it is very important to remind us all that we should use this only with mistakes that we are specifically working on as a class, such as difficult and she don't instead of she doesn't. We should not be using this for all the mistakes all the time. That would be counterproductive. So sometimes we should let mistakes be. Here's how you can address mistakes in general that do not impede communication or are not part of the list of mistakes or errors that you are working on as a class at that time. So you can try saying this. So the student is probably saying, I is tired. And you as a teacher, you say, you are tired. I'm sorry. I am tired too. So you should try this instead of the student says, I is tired. And you as a teacher say, I is tired is not correct. Say, I am tired. And then the student just says it correctly. I am tired. And then the teacher says just good. So if a mistake appears again, so if you notice over time that this mistake, I is tired, is repeated as a class, you could definitely have a mini lesson planned for the class to go over this. So when mistakes appear, we can use them to explain our thinking out loud of why we used a certain word or another, or a certain spelling or another. Here's an example of an activity that lends itself nicely to allowing the students to explain their mistakes. So in the peer feedback example that I shared earlier, in which students wrote about earthquake, they have a second checklist that focuses on the common mistakes they make or they are working on as a class. Again, difficult, it should be with 2F, she doesn't or she does not. And I added another one that was a mistake that I was making, phone, I would spell it with an F instead of PH. So you would include that second checklist. So the discussion between the 2 students would look like, and I'll show that on your next slide. So student 1 would say, I see here you spelled phone with an F instead of an PH. Could you explain your thinking? And student 2 could answer, I know we talked about how we spell phone with PH and not F because PH sounds like F, so I always forget that. And you have the checklist here again for your reference. Teachers can also make mistakes and explain them. As a teacher, you can also plan for mistakes to really show we are all learners and mistakes are natural. So an example here, the unit is on writing about your weekends. And the activity is, as a class, students read a teacher-written story about her visit to a nearby park that happened during the weekend. And you have here on the right-hand side the teacher-written story. So after they read it, student 1 says, I think the past tense is not used in all sentences. And their teacher says, I know we talked about keeping the same tense, specifically the past, all the time when we share stories. So I need to check and make sure I do not use both the past and the present tenses. So I'm curious to hear from you. Can you share a common mistake you or your students make? I really want to hear.
All right, it's your turn, everyone. Please share a common mistake your students make, or maybe a mistake that you yourself commonly make. And Elena, while we're waiting for the audience to think and share those ideas in the chat, we have so many great comments that I want to share with you. So first, Clara says that mistakes are a great teaching moment if handled gently, and that she is trying to embrace errors as part of the process herself. So she's thankful for the ideas that you are sharing. Jana says, I loved the marble jar activity, and they're going to try this in their class. Shin says that figuring out when to correct students and when to let mistakes be is something that they really struggle with. And Shin likes your idea to track common mistakes the whole class makes. They said it's not a recommendation they've heard before, and they're very excited to try it in their class. And Victor also says, thank you so much for these ideas. I feel more comfortable sharing about my mistakes as a teacher now with their students. Thanks for those great comments, everybody. And it looks like we have some responses to the current question coming in as well. So let's see. First, we have Rena, who says, my students forget to add the S for third person verbs. They understand the rule, but when they're speaking, they forget to apply it. Let's see. Daniel says that they often forget to slow down when giving instructions to students, and they move through it too quickly. Definitely, that can be a challenge. Let's see. Hero says, my students confuse past tense verb forms regularly. They add ed to everything. Layla says that students say I am agree. They directly translate that from a local expression. George says that his students often misuse prepositions when they're writing. That's a very common mistake that they make. Mina says that as a teacher, she used to correct students too quickly instead of letting students self-correct. That's a common thing a lot of teachers can relate to. All right, let's see. Julian mixes up borrow and lend even as a teacher. That's a great example. Even teachers can get confused sometimes. Ali says that students will often mix up formal and informal expressions. Great example. Clara forgets to scaffold vocabulary enough for students sometimes, so that can be a challenge for her as a teacher. Omar says that their students often translate directly from the native language, and that can cause some issues with comprehension and understanding. And one more comment here from Nadia. Nadia says that students often mix up fun and funny. It's something that she really struggled with too when she was learning English. Thank you so much for your great participation, everybody.
Yes, thank you so much. And I really appreciated your comments. One thing to add is that sometimes in writing, it's easier to self-correct because you can go back and check. In speaking, it happens so fast, it's harder. So thank you for noting the difference between speaking and writing. Slowing down, that's something I struggled as a teacher too. And I learned the slower I talk, the more likely I am to catch my own mistakes. So thank you for sharing that. And making mistakes because you translate, that's very common. So I appreciate that you all had and know exactly what your students are struggling with. So I think that's great. Thank you for sharing. All right, so here's a quick recap of how we can support a learning mindset in the classroom by embracing mistakes. And we can do that by keeping track of your mistakes individually or as a class, acknowledging mistakes, and explaining your thinking and the root cause of the mistakes. So our session today was about developing a learning mindset in the language learning classroom. As noted earlier, first, no one is born knowing it all, and we all need to learn different things. We are actually all born learners. Learning anything is a process, takes time, involves mistakes and errors, and is non-linear, and it can look very messy. That includes especially language learning. We reflected on how we or someone we know learned to ride a bike. First, they used training wheels and they did not keep the direction straight. It took probably several tries or sessions until they were confident and could do it. They might have had peers or someone who already knew how to ride a bike, like in the picture here, or like the teacher is in the classroom, who was helping them, cheering on them, and helping them with correcting the direction of the bike or the balance. How does that translate in the classroom, specifically the language learning classroom? Well, we talked about having a classroom community of learners, which is students and teachers together who have a common goal, who are supportive of each other by helping each other and by embracing mistakes as learning opportunities. So, your turn. After exploring strategies for embracing mistakes and building a community of learners, what is one specific change or adaptation you plan to make in your teaching to better support a learning mindset?
All right, everyone, let us know. After hearing all of these great ideas today about embracing mistakes and building a community of learners, let us know what is one specific change or adaptation that you plan to make in your own teaching to better support a learning mindset. We can't wait to hear from you all. And while those come in, Elena, we have a wonderful comment from Mina, just expressing a lot of appreciation for the ideas that you shared. Mina says, thank you so much for all of these great ideas. I love them all, and I'm going to use them in my teaching. They've made me more self-aware of my own practices and things I want to change in the future. Thanks, Mina. We're so happy to hear that. That is definitely the goal for our webinars, that you can get some ideas you can take and implement right away in your own classroom. All right, and we are getting some great responses to this question as well. So let's see. Natalie says that I am inspired to rethink how I give feedback. Great. Farhad said, when I make a mistake, now I'm going to feel more comfortable acknowledging it so that students know that mistakes are common and a normal part of learning, even for teachers. Jana says, I'm going to include more reflection time after tasks so students have more time to think and reflect. Raj says that they are going to use the mistakes tally as a whole class. They might also have students keep individual tallies for common mistakes that they make as individual learners. Sana says that she loves the idea of the second checklist that you shared, and she's going to try to use that in her own classroom to help students be more conscious about why mistakes happen. Victor says that his students love games, and so they think that the marble jar idea might work very well in the classroom. Noah is going to share more about their own learning journey with their students. Irene is going to encourage students to track their own progress and keep track of their mistakes to see how they are improving over time. Bilal says, as teachers, we always want to correct mistakes. I let my mistakes be when the focus is on fluency and write mistakes for later in indirect feedback. Lucia says that small changes can really make a big difference in mindset, and that she's going to shift her perception from a class to having a learning community based on the ideas that you shared. And one more comment here from Julian. Julian says, I think I will ask more questions from my students to get to know more about them. Great ideas, everybody. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yes, thank you so much all for sharing. I appreciate and I'm glad to hear that some of the strategies that were shared today are useful and you plan to use them or adapt them for your classroom. So thank you very much. I'm excited for you all. So in this session today, we discussed about the importance of promoting a learning mindset and how it can help with classroom management. We explain you strategies to support a learning mindset in the language learning classroom, and we reflected on how we can implement and or change strategies to promote a learning mindset. And here are some of the references that I used in creating this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elena, for sharing these very helpful practical strategies to help both students and teachers develop a learning mindset.